Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to describe very shortly the life of women in the Tudor and Stuart periods, and we will see how they could be treated, or better say, mistreated by their husbands. It was not an easy life. In particular, we will see what were the daily chores and risks of women's lives. We will see what was the life of a married woman in the 17th century. We will see what was the difference between rich women and poor women, and you will have in the transcript a model answer that will help you to answer today's question, which is how was life for women, of course, in the 17th century. So let's start by looking at the daily chores and risks of women's lives. The daily life of women in the 17th century could be as hard as that of any man. Most people lived in the countryside, not in cities, and worked as farmers. The men would usually take out the cattle to graze, work in the fields, cut firewood, and do many other things. Women were also, of course, very busy. It's not true that they did not work. They did a lot of work. They had to feed the farm animals, collect the eggs of the chicken, cook for the family, and go to whatever marketplace to sell the food that they made. For example, if you bake some bread or have some eggs and you need a few coins, you go to the nearest market and sell them. Furthermore, they had to take care of the children and give birth. Now, giving birth was very dangerous. It was particularly dangerous because people at the time in the 17th century did not know what caused illnesses. They had their own ideas about bad disease causing bad smell causing disease and so on. They did not know that most disease is caused by bacteria and viruses. So giving birth in a filthy and unhygienic conditions of the 17th century very often caused the death of the mother and occasionally of the child as well. Childbirth was one of the leading causes of female mortality, and it was calculated that 1 in 5 births ended with the death of the mother. Often, as we said, the children would die as well. Life was not easy in the past. If you ever get a time machine and need to go to the past, remember to bring a lot of antibiotics. Now, let's look at the life of a married woman in the 17th century. Most women were married, not all of them. Those who were not married remained in the house, not in their own house, but in the house of their parents. They did not have a house of their own, and gained a living, survived by spinning wool. This is why today we still call older unmarried women spinsters. Now, life for a married woman could be easier, but also not. I mean, it could be easier if they found a nice husband who treated them well and did not really punish them a lot. Many husbands, however, were chosen not by the woman herself, but by her family, and they could often be brutal and inconsiderate. They had a lot of power over them. For example, wives who complained too much could be forced to wear a scold's bridle. It was some sort of mask that prevented them from talking or made them talk like Bane in the last Batman movie. In some cases, they could also be shown to the entire village with this mask in order to humiliate them. Look at the woman who talks too much, and, well, not the best thing to do. Now, women also could not start a divorce. If the husband was mistreating them and they wanted to leave, they could not. The decision to divorce could only be taken by the husband. Finally, women generally did not own property. According to custom and to law at the time, everything they had to their name, so houses, land, homes, and whatever household items, even bed sheets, automatically passed to their husbands when they got married. Husbands could divorce, of course, and give wives to other men. This was called wife sale. So they could just sell the wives. Also, husbands could violently beat their wives, and there would be no legal consequences. No legal consequences. A lot of people actually revolted. A lot of women reacted, but legally the husbands were in the right. So in general, while not all husbands by any means were violent and abusive, women were still treated as second-class people, okay, with much fewer rights and with fewer protections. Now, historians generally know very little about what normal women felt, for a very simple reason. They did not leave many traces of their lives. Most women at the time did not know how to read and write, and even if they did, they had so many chores to do that they hardly had any time to write things down. However, we do know a great deal more about rich women. Why? Because they tended to be more educated, they tended to have more free time, they wrote letters to the friend, they occasionally wrote journals, or they had themselves painted by famous artists. So, despite all the differences in wealth and social status, wealthy women had the same problems and the same difficulties as poorer women. They were the subjects of the same punishment, they had the same restrictions in terms of owning properties, and so on. So, those were the very essential facts about the life of women in the 17th century. Now I would like you to answer the final question. How was life for women? You have to describe the daily life of a woman, describe how certain women were treated by their husbands, and finally explain what were the differences between rich women and poor women and why we know more about rich women. Okay, that was it for today. I'm looking forward to read what you write, and see you next time.